Good day! We are here to explain the Week 11 Midterm Project. My name is Earl Jairo Buñag and my groupmates are Ablaña Elaiza, Almocera Francess, Arevalo Mariel Nicole, Balagot Miguel, Caacoy Aicie, Capacio Denssel Josh, De Leon, Johrenc, and Delfinado Clare. And the following are the specific requirements. To start the project, let me present the class diagram of the Week 11 project. It uses two rectangular shapes with three partitions each to represent the encapsulated form of the classes. The association was defined with a straight line in the middle of two rectangles connecting each other, meaning we use the binary association to link the two peer classes. The student class has the attributes that has negative signs before the variable name to represent the access modifier, which is set to private. The attributes are private integer student ID, private string first name, private string last name, private course string, private list subject and role. The third partition was allowed for the methods of the student class. The methods that are used in the student class are having the positive sign that represent public access modifier. The methods that are used in the public void student that receives integer ID, string first name, string last name, and string course as a parameter. Then public void add subject method accepts subject parameters. The public void get all details method and public void get list, and lastly, the public void remove subject methods that accept integer subject ID as a parameter. While in the other hand, subject class has its own attributes such as private integer ID, private integer units, private string subject name, private list student enrolled. For the methods, the subject class accepts argument integer subject ID, string subject name, and integer units. The other methods are public void add student that accept parameter student, public void get student enrolled, and public void remove student that accepts integer student ID. If we will read the class diagram, it will be read as every student has one or more subject, and vice versa, every subject has one or more students.
Selecting number 1 will create a student record, and the user will need to enter the first name, last name, and the course of the student. The ID will start with 1. Selecting number 2 will create a subject record, and the user will need to enter a subject name and the number of units. Selecting number 3 will enlist a subject to a student. The user will need to enter the student's ID and a subject ID. Then the student is successfully enlisted to a subject. Selecting number 4 will remove a subject from a student. The user will need to enter the student ID and the subject ID of the subject they want to be removed. Selecting number 5 will display the details of a student. The user will only need to enter a student ID to see the information of a student from the records. Selecting number 6 will only display all of the details from all of the students. Selecting number 7 will display all the students' details enlisted in a selected subject. The user will need to enter a subject ID to see the subject and the names of the students who are enlisted in it. Selecting number 8 will only terminate the program and the system will be exited.
Good day, Dangal greetings. I'm Mariel, Nicole, Arevalo, and I'm here to discuss my part in our program. In student class, we imported two libraries, the array list and the list library, to avoid errors in our list collection in our program. We defined the private as the access modifiers of our class fields, then int, since we'll be accepting an integer value for the student ID, followed by a string to hold the value for the first name, last name, and course. A list instance with a generic type parameter, private list subject, wherein student is a class we are creating instances inside the list to be stored. Subjects enrolled is the name of our list collection is equals to new array list subject. This syntax will allow us to make a list collection of our object from our subject class. We defined a get student ID, get first name, get last name, and get course as a getter for student ID, first name, last name, and course, and also a getter for the subjects enrolled. The getters will only return the values of the class fields. A parameterized constructor named student, accepting values of int student ID, string first name, string last name, and string course. To initialize the value, we need to use this keyword. This.student ID is equals to student ID. This.first name is equals to first name. This.last name is equals to last name. And this.course is equals to course. And the constructor for a add subject that will initialize the subjects enrolled. Lastly, a getAllDetails method to print the subjects of the student. We use the if-else statement to print if the student is enrolled or not to any of the subjects, and a for loop statement to print the subject ID, subject name, and units.
Hello, good day everyone, and dangal greetings. My name is Johrenc and I'm here to explain my part in our project code. First, I'm gonna start in the getListSize method. So, if subject enrolled.size is equal to 0, the system is gonna print student is not enrolled to any subject. Else, the system is gonna print all the class fields, which is the student ID, first name, last name, get course, and the subjects enrolled. And that's it. Next is the remove subject method. The initial value is -1 and not 0 because 0 is a valid index position. And the for loop is to iterate through the elements of subjects collection. So the this.subject enrolled that remove is to perform deletion by using index position as the target position. And lastly is the break statement to terminate the loop once it is found. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
My name is Francess Almocera and this is my part of our project. In subject class, first, we have private class fields to secure the data hiding, then creating objects of class student by using the constructors that the values of the variables to get access in student class for student enroll and get the array list. Next is the getters for ID, subject name, units, and the student enrolled in another class by using the object list. The setter and the getters is a public access specifier method for modifying and viewing values of the variables and assigned to set and get data from within a class that is private. For instructor, we have subject parameterized constructor that accept the value of subject ID, subject name, and units. The next is add student method for adding the student in student enroll by using the this.key plus student.add open parentheses student and close parentheses.
In the subject class, we need to get students that enrolled by using public void get students enrolled for students stud is students enrolled. To get their information, which is the student IDs, first name, last name, and course, we print by using system.out print line inside the parameter double quotation student ID plus student.get student ID. System.out print line student name plus stud.get first name plus double quotation plus stud.get last name. System.out print line course plus student.get course. When it comes to remove the student, we need to remove student by using public void remove student. Inside the parameter int student ID, int index position equals -1, for int index equals 0. Index less than students enrolled at size. Index increment. If the user wants to remove the subject from a student, then the user selects 4, then input the student and subject ID to remove.
I am here to discuss to you the main class. First, we must import all the classes that will be needed for the whole program, such as the array list, buffered reader, IO exception, and input stream reader. Then, inside the class main, we declare the class field that will be used in the program. Public static int stud ID and subject ID both are having the value of 1 and student ID having the value of 0. This was followed by private static string first name, last name, and course with all having empty value. Then we declare private static int for subject ID and units with both 0 value and private static string subject name that is empty. Then we declare the list that will be served as the container for the information of the student and subjects. Public static list student equals new array list student and public static list subject list equals new array list. Then lastly, we declare public static student select student and subject selected subject that is both equal null. After declaring the attributes, we will now call the buffered reader and we'll call it private static buffered reader br equals new buffered reader. New input stream reader system.in to read the user input and store it into object br. Then the public static void main string args throw IO exception to execute the program. It has throw keywords to declare exception that can occur during the execution of program. To show a menu-driven program, we must have create a menu method that will show the necessary option. The menu will be explained furthermore by the group mates, but for now, we will focus on how the menu works. In order to always pop up the menu needed, we must put it inside the loop. That is why we use the do-while loop. While the option is not equal to 8, the program will call the method menu inside the do and print the choose number to instruct the user to input choice. This choice will be read by the buffered reader and will store to the input string option. The string option will be subjected for the switch case. If the user selects number 1, then the menu will call the create student method, then break. If the user selects number 2, then the menu will call the create subject method, then break. If the user selects number 3, then the menu will call the enlist subject method, then break. If the user selects number 4, then the menu will call the remove method, then break. If the user selects number 5, then the menu will call the display student details method, then break. If the user selects number 6, then the menu will call the display all details method, then break. If the user selects number 7, then the menu will call the display subject details method, then break. If the user selects number 8, then the program will be terminated. In the other hand, if the user will put invalid choice, then the program will go to default and tell the user invalid input. If the user selects number 1, then the menu will call the create student method, then break. If the user selects number 2, then the menu will call the create subject method, then break. If the user selects number 3, then the menu will call the enlist subject method, then break. If the user selects the number 4, then the menu will call the remove method, then break. If the user selects number 5, then the menu will call the display student details method, then break. If the user selects number 6, then the menu will call the display all details method, then break. If the user selects number 7, then the menu will call the display subject details method, then break. If the user selects number 8, then the program will be terminated. In other hand, if the user will put invalid choice, then the program will go to the default and tell the user that invalid input.
We created a method named createStudent that will accept the user input for student ID, first name, last name, and course. We created an object named studentObj where we will store the user input, and we use the add method to open the user input that is stored in studentObj to add on the list student. We also created a method named createSubject. First, we print the value of the subject ID that has a value of 1, and every time this method is used, the value of subject ID will increment. It will also accept the user input for the subject name. We use a do-while, and inside it, we use a try-catch statement that will not allow the user to input anything but just a number. We also use a if else statement for the user input to check if the value is less than or equal to 0, and in else, we created a object named subject obj where the values of the user input for subject ID, subject name, and units will be stored. We use the add method to append the user input that is stored in subject obj to add on the list student, and we use a break statement to end the loop.
This enlist sub method, its purpose is to search for the student on list using the ID of the student. Beginning at the first, if the statement check whether the list of student size equals to 0, means that the list student is empty, means there are no data inside. It was same as the list subject on else if statement. Then on the else part block, it has do while on it, and the condition is while the selected student is null or empty, it will do the block of code inside the do, and inside the do, it have the try catch wherein the condition in the catch is number format exception, wherein if the user input a text or character that is not a number, the try block, it will be catch and display a text, but if the inputted was indeed an ID of the student, and if the ID is not found, it will prompt a text.
Good day, I'm Clare Delfinado, and I'm gonna explain the flow of the next code. And for the inside of the try method, will print the enter subject ID. And the user should enter their subject ID using the buffered reader. The subject ID will store in the variable subject ID. After that, inside of the for loop has if method for getting the selected subject. First, the list of subject using the variable subject ID that have data stored earlier using buffered reader. Subject that gets subject ID, open and close parenthesis, is equal to subject ID. This is to get the data stored. And if that is equals to sub j, the message for student enrolled will show using that get student enrolled. And next line of code is if the selected subject is equal to null, the message will show using the system.out.println subject ID plus subject ID, which is the variable where the data that the user stored, plus not found. This means the user is not allowed to enter this blank. Next is the message for input invalid. Please input valid numbers only to make sure the user enter correctly. The while loop, when the selected subject is equal to null, it means the user not allowed to enter blank. In do loop, the code will get the student ID and the existing is true. The next if method is when the existing is equal to true, the system.out.println will show the message student plus the variable student ID to get the ID number of the student is already enrolled to subject plus the subject ID variable to get the ID number of the subject. The while loop, when the selected subject is equal to null, it means the user not allowed to enter blank again. Last, in enlist sub method, is when the user enters not equal to null is selected student and subject. The add subject and add student will enlist the student ID and subject and will show the message successfully enlisted student ID plus selected student that get student ID to get the student ID number. 2. Selected subject that get subject name to get the subject name using the system.out.println.
Hello, good day, and dangal greetings to everyone. My name is Johrenc and I'm here to explain my part in our group, which is the remove method. This method will happen if the user inputs the number 4, and it means remove a subject from a student. So the fields used in this method is the selected student equals to null and selected subject equals to null. We also use the boolean code for this method, which is boolean is existing equals false. So the first loop that is shown in the program is if the list student is less than or equals to 0, the system is going to show no student records, which means if the user inputs number 4 in the program and the user doesn't have a student record yet, this loop will happen. And same with the list subject, if the user didn't input or enlist any subject yet, the program is gonna show no subject records. So the next loop is when the user finally inputs a student and subject record, the program will ask for the user to enter the student ID. The for loop used in this program is to test if the user inputs a correct student ID, and this will result to a break. So if the selected student is equals to null, the system will print student is not found. Else if subject enrolled is less than or equals to 0, the system will print student ID is not enrolled to any subject. That's it, and thank you very much for listening.
Good day, dangal greetings. I'm Mariel, Arevalo, and I'm here to discuss my part in the main class. A dual statement to print the subject to be removed by the user using the subject ID equals integer that parse int buffered reader that read line method. We used a for loop statement to get the subject ID the user wanted to remove, and a break statement to terminate the loop once it is found. We used an if-else statement, if subject that gets subject ID method is equals to subject ID to check if the subject ID the user entered is existing or not. If is existing is equals to true, the program is going to print student ID is not enlisted to subject, and else to print the subject ID not found. Another if statement, if selected subject is not equals to null, the selected student that removes subject ID, will remove the subject, and selected subject that removes student ID, will remove the student. Then it will print the subject is removed successfully. Lastly, a catch statement that will print input invalid, please input valid numbers only, when an attempt is made to convert a string with an incorrect format to a numeric value.
Hello everyone, my name is Elaiza Ablaña, 2ITC. In the main class, the student details will display by using private static void display student details. That selected student equals null. That serves as the default value of student details. We use if else if close and open parentheses list student the size equal to operator, then system that out print line no student records. If the user selects or choose number 3, which is enlist a subject to a student, then the result is no student records. System that out print line inside the parameter enter student ID, then the student input their student number. If selected student equal to operator null, system that out print line inside the parameter double quotation, student ID plus static, the static student ID plus not found. If the student input the student ID that not available in the list, then the result is not found. System that out print line inside the parameter, input invalid, please input valid numbers only. The user can only input numbers, not the letters.
In main class, and display all details method. Displaying values of the object using this method of the classes, we use the if-else method if the list student that size method is less than or equal to 0, the system that out that print line will show the message no student records. The list student is a variable where the data stored, and the that size method is the method to get the size of the data in list students. And in else, we have here the for loop, where the system that out that print line used to print all the details when the selected student is equal to that system that outprint line student ID plus the variable select student that gets student ID to get the student ID. Same process for getting the student name and course, is only the .get method. Lastly, is the selected student that get all details to print it all, and in the end is just to print the many dash as a barrier so that the display is not messy and organized. Thank you.
We have here the method for the display subject details. The purpose of this method is to display the details of the subject by using the try and catch statement. The selected subject will be null as well as the list of students that are enrolled. On the try statement, the if-else statement and a do, for, and a while loop will be shown on the source code. The if statement is used to determine if the size will be less than or equal to 0. If yes, a message will be shown that there are no subject records. The else statement has the do and for loop inside. The use of the do loop is to get the subject ID from the user that will be entered from the output. The loop is used to get the list of subjects from the subject class by SUBJ declaration. If the entered subject ID will be equal to the subjects on the list, then the selected subject will be shown on the output. Then the value of the selected subject will be changed to the SUBJ declaration, and then the student enrolled will get the collected students enrolled. If the selected subject is equal to null, a message on the output will show that the subject cannot be found. The while loop is used to set the selected subject to null. There is also an if-else statement that identifies if the number of students that are enrolled will be equal to 0, then it will show that there is not currently enrolled on a subject, else it will get the list of the enrolled students. Finally, the catch of this method is used to determine if the user entered an invalid number. The last method of the main class is the menu method. It is declared as static so it can be accessed outside the class. This will only print the 8 main selections of the menu for the user to enter on the output.